Finally, I think we have it displayed in both places, right? Okay, I think that officially is the longest it has ever taken me to get a presentation up on a screen. All right, real quick, like Nate said, I run my own consulting firm. I've been in IT for a long time. I've been doing this for like 20 years or more. I don't know. I stopped counting at some point. I have been doing SharePoint pretty much exclusively until Office 365 came around, and I kind of dumped all that in there. So SharePoint paid my bills for a long time. So I've been doing SharePoint for well over 13 years. And then all the Power stuff came out, and I started playing with that. And I've got a really nice background with database management and visualizations and Excel, and I do a lot of teaching around advanced Excel and pivot tables. So Power BI was kind of a natural thing for me to pick up for fun, right? So I've been playing around with that, and I've been doing it for a while, and people kept asking me, they're like, okay, I've heard of the Power BI thing, I don't know much about it, but I really want to kind of understand what it is and how to use it. So I put together this kind of basic deck on Power BI and dashboards to really explain to people what Power BI is. Oh yeah, I also have a Six Sigma black belt. I've been doing that for a while too. So there's my information. Most importantly, if you want to follow me on Twitter, that's kind of where I put stuff out, and you can find out where I'm going to be and what I'm doing. Okay, so when I give this presentation, I'd like to tell people you can build dashboards in 3 easy steps. It's pretty simple. Number 1, connect to your data, right? So Microsoft data is the easiest. If it's Microsoft based, it's like super duper easy. You just pick what you want. As long as you know where to find it, it'll pull in pretty quick and easy. If it's something else, when I first started speaking on Power BI, I basically said if it's something else, hire somebody, because you're not going to want to mess with it. But the really nice thing is they've made all these really new adapters in Power BI, everything, including DB2, which is crazy because I used to have to write custom connections for DB2. So now you can go in, and if I'm going to show you in Power BI, there's just like a list that's this long of pretty much everything. However, take it all with a grain of salt. Like, click on your connector, play around with it, see if it works. If it doesn't work, you might still end up needing help with kind of that translation of the data into Microsoft readable data. But for the most part, they tend to work pretty well. So number 1, just basically figure out what data you're going to connect to and connect to it. Number 2, once you've determined what data you're going to pull in, then you need to model your data. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more extensively, but basically make sure you've got the right data. You're going to clean up your data, which we're going to talk about, and make sure your data has categories. These are kind of the big 3 things when you're modeling your data, because if you don't figure these things out, then when you go to do your visualizations, you're going to have really nice charts and graphs and reports that tell you absolutely nothing. So make sure that you've got the right data and make sure you model it, which we'll talk a little bit more about as we go forward. And then the last thing is, once you figure that out, then just create your reports and dashboards. So tell people, I mean, it's really not rocket science. It's finding the right data, make sure it's the way you need it, and then create your reports off of that. All right, super easy. So first thing is, before you start doing this, make sure that you're asking the right questions. So you're going to hear all the time people preaching about data being the right data. So Power BI is a great reporting tool, but if you don't have the right data modeled in the right way, it makes no difference. So it's more important to understand what you need before you ever get to the reporting tool. If you've done your job right at the data level, at the modeling level, the Power BI reporting part of it should be easy. Like, it should be the easiest part. All right. So the couple of things that you really want to focus on are, what questions is your dashboard or your report going to answer? That's like the number 1 thing. So what are you trying to get out of this? What are you trying to answer with this? Who's going to look at it? So whether you've got an executive looking at it, or whether you've got like a financial reporter looking at it, so financial analyst, you're going to have different types of reports, different types of data, different types of dashboard. So who's looking at it is really important. So let's say you've got an executive looking at it. They're probably going to want to see not very many things, a lot of pictures, right? Very limited of scope of information, probably a lot of drill downs. Like, they're like, I want to know, should I pick red or green? Just tell me, right? They want very, very concrete, defined information. Whereas if you start working on, maybe you're creating something for an analyst, they might want a lot of different options. So you might have a really busy report page that's got a lot of different stuff on it coming in from a lot of places. So basically determine, what are they going to answer and who's going to look at it, all right? What are those people going to use the dashboard information to decide? right? So this goes back to our what questions are they going to answer, but based on what they're seeing, how are they going to use that information? Okay, so this is important stuff to know before you start designing your report so that you know what kind of reports to make, what kind of dashboards to make, how many things to put on there, but what are they going to use that to decide? That's going to tell you what kind of reports, what kind of visualizations you're going to want to make. All right. How recent does your data need to be? I'm going to give you the answer right now. It's a lot less recent than they tell you. The answer for every end user is going to be, I want it to be live. I want it to be now. I want it to be as updated as possible. The truth of the matter is 90% of the time, it's perfectly fine if it was refreshed overnight, right? So the problem is that everybody wants it now and everybody wants live data, but live data is really slow, right? So if I go out and I'm hitting that database constantly, first of all, I'm pushing on my resources on whatever data source that it is that I'm looking at. Second of all, maybe I have potential risk that's inherent with hitting that database all the time, right? In addition, the performance is going to be really slow because I'm going to go hit that database every single time I look at something. So you really need to be very, very clear with your end user when you start designing things about how recent does this really need to be? Because if the data that's coming into the data source that I'm pulling in only needs to be updated once a day, you can update it overnight while nobody's looking at it, and then all day long they can pull from that data, and the performance gets really good, right? Because now it's all updated, and now I just need to pull visuals, and every time they look at those visuals, they're going to be really fast, right? What data do you actually need? Okay, so you talk to your end users, and they need all the data, right? The more data you have, the better as an analyst to figure out what your answers are, but from an end user visualization perspective, it's as small amount of data as you need to answer the questions that you have, but as much data as you need to answer the questions that you have, right? So it's finding this boundary of enough data to give you accurate information, but not so much data that it's going to slow things down. So which pieces of data do you need? And do you need all of the data in that visualization, or can you do multiple data sources for multiple data models and then pull those together? All right. And then most importantly, what data do you have? Okay. So I love it when people call me and say, hey, Sharon, can you build me these reports and these dashboards and these visualizations? I'm like, yeah, sure. What do you want to do? I want reports on this for the last 5 years. Okay, so where's the information for this particular thing, for drill down for this particular thing? We don't have that. Well, then I can't report on it, right? So there's a couple of things here with this, what data do you have? Sometimes you have that data, you just don't realize it. All right, so sometimes you think that you're missing that data, but the truth of the matter, so let's say, for example, simple answer, I need first name and last name, okay? But I've only got a field that has a full name, right? You already have the data, you're just going to need to parse that out into 2 separate fields. Maybe I need historical information about something, but I have to go to another data source to get it. Whether I have it in an Excel spreadsheet, whether I have it in an archive data source, maybe I have it in a CSV file output from some archaic solution. Where is the data that you need, and do you have it or not? If you don't have the data you need, then I would say as quickly as humanly possible, start gathering that data, right? So if you already have it, you're fine. But if you don't have a piece of data that's going to give you what you need for that visualization, you need to ask that question so that you can go look for it, and you can add that column in, that metadata in, that survey answer in, whatever it is that you need. Get on it now. Sometimes it's just as easy as sending some surveys out to certain people and saying, hey, do you have any historical information about this that you can add to my data source, right? Sometimes you're just starting from scratch, right? So if you can kind of start with this before you ever get into reporting and dashboards, this gets you about 90% of the way to make sure that you have the right information to get going. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to start plugging data into Power BI. You may be able to make reports and dashboards, like I said, but it's likely they're going to be inaccurate, or it's likely that you're not going to be able to do drill downs, or you're not going to be able to make it work the way you want to. So it's more important to make sure you have the right data and set up properly than it is to jump straight to the reporting piece, right? So this gets us to, okay, Sharon, now that you've lectured us on data, since I burned a little bit of time getting this set up, I'm going to skip a little faster. I spend a lot of time talking about data modeling and doing that right, because I think it's so important to make sure that that's all set up properly before we ever get it to the reporting side. But once you do get to the reporting side, what is Power BI anyways? It's really funny. I had a conversation with a potential client today, which I think we're going to sign something tomorrow, so maybe a new client. And the question she asked me is, I started saying, well, how much data are you pulling in? Are you looking maybe long-term at a data warehouse? Because they're wanting to pull this and this and this and this and this and this, and they want to report on all of it. Like, can't we just do that all in Power BI? And I'm like, well, it kind of depends, right? How much stuff are you pulling in? How often do you want it? How much work do you want to put into organizing that information and modeling that data? So Power BI is designed to allow you to connect to various sources and types of data the same way that a data warehouse does. Similar. It's kind of like a data warehouse light, right? If you don't have a ton of stuff and you want to pull it into Power BI, it is capable of doing that. If you have a large amount of data and a large amount of data sources, I don't know that I personally would use Power BI as a data warehouse. But if you have a small amount of data or you have a lot of different things that you want to pull in, it might do okay. Just, you just got to ask that question. But you can connect to various sources and types of data. Once you get that data in there, you have the ability to model it within the program. This is kind of a big deal. So a couple of years ago, Excel added the ability with Power Query for us to model our data inside of Excel, which is super cool, right? We all got excited about that. They added Power View so that we can make reports and dashboards and things kind of in Excel, right? I'm going to give it a kind of. I mean, it was a great idea, and it's coming along nicely. The newer versions of Excel are getting there. But you could do this. You could start to model and transform your data within Excel. So Power BI borrowed that technology, and anything that's in Power Query is the same thing that's in Power BI, all right? So if you're comfortable using Power Query in Excel, then that's what you have in Power BI. You have that data modeling piece that's in there where you can pull this data in. You can now model, shape, and transform it just like you do in Excel. You can have calculated columns. You can limit your data sources. You can model it however you want it to look. But you want to do this in a way that makes sense to you for your visualizations, all right? So this way, you're not pulling the entire data source in the way it is. You're pulling the pieces and parts of that data in the way that you need them in a query with the right calculated columns, with the right categories so that you've got drill downs, whatever that is. It gives you this opportunity to pull that data in and then model, shape, and transform it to what you need. And then at the end of the day, when you've done all of that, it gives you the ability to then create visualizations like reports and dashboards, right? So that you can understand more about the data that you just brought in, all right? So that is Power BI kind of in a nutshell what it's capable of, all right? Now, beyond that, to make it a little more confusing, there's also multiple versions of Power BI. So if it's not bad enough that you're like, well, what is Power BI? Well, there's three different types. When I started doing this presentation, there was kind of two, and then they added the third piece to it. So we have this piece called Power BI Desktop, and Power BI Desktop is a free download. You do not have to pay for it to use it. In fact, after I do the presentation, I'll walk you through a demo of Power BI and how it works. You do not have to log in to use Power BI Desktop. You can download it to your computer. You can connect to data sources, you can model the data, and then you can create visualizations. The limitation is that it is designed for you to learn how to use Power BI, and then you can share those things with other people, but you can only share them in a view-only way, right? So you can create a PDF and then share that PDF out with others. That's really all it's designed to do at a free level. If you want it to do more than that, then essentially what you will do is you will create that, you will turn it into a Power BI kind of like a project file where it's got all the bits and pieces. And then you're going to publish that out to either your Power BI server service or your Power BI portal service. Okay, so you've got the version that runs on-prem, which is Power BI server, or you've got the version that runs online, which is the Power BI portal. Okay, so you're going to take your Power BI project that you build, you're going to save it as it's a PBIX file. And then you can share that. So somebody actually asked me, I did this presentation Saturday in Minneapolis, and somebody's like, so what's to keep me from creating this, saving it as a PBIX and sending it to somebody else? I was like, nothing. You can create a PBIX file, you can send it to your friends, they can open it in Power BI Desktop and use it. However, what you can't do is you can't push it out to your users as a collaborative solution. So you can't send it to your executive team, you can't use it as a tab in Teams. Right? There's some limitations to what you can do. Oh yeah, that's on my computer. I have that set up. Maybe I'll try to do it at the very end and see if we can get it to work. So anyways, you can't do that with Power BI Desktop. So Power BI Desktop, you can pull in data, you can model it, you can create things, but then that's kind of where it ends. After that, it needs to go out to Power BI Portal or Power BI Server. All right, so Power BI Service is either the online version or the service version or server version. They basically are very, very similar. The difference is this is the one that allows other people to then work with the PBX files that you create, right? The primary way that people use this now is the online subscription service. I don't see very many people who have Power BI Server. I just don't, partially just because it's a pain. I hate to say it, it used to be, I think it was a good idea. Yeah, exactly. But on the other hand, the Power BI service, the Power BI portal is amazing. Like I love using the Power BI portal. It works like a dream. I don't have any issues with it. So what I see is primarily people using that. So what you can do is you can bring in those PBIX files. You can create a project in the Power BI portal. Then you can share all the different pieces and parts of those Power BI desktop reports that you've created. Okay, so then you publish it out there. People can see the visualizations, people can interact with it, people can download it in Excel, all kinds of fun different options. All right. The other thing is you can share things out with Power BI users as read only if they don't have a license and you do. So let's say you have a license for Power BI online, so the Power BI portal. I have a license. I can set up files. I can share them with you. If you do not have a Power BI license, you can look at it. If you're in my tenant, you don't have a license, I share it with you, you can look at it, you can't do anything more than that. If you have a Power BI license for Power BI portal, you can then interact with me. All right, so that's kind of the difference in levels. So this is where people are like, really, I gotta pay for another thing? I didn't make it, I'm just telling you, okay? All right, so that's the difference between Power BI Desktop and Service. All right, so to get Power BI Desktop, it's really easy. There's two ways. One, you can go to powerbi.microsoft.com and you click on free download and install it on your computer. Here's the difference. It's also available in the Windows App Store on Windows 10 machines. So if you go to the Windows 10, the Windows App Store, type in Power BI, you can download it through the App Store or you can download it on here. Here's the difference. If you download it through the App Store, your Windows updates will keep Power BI up to date. So every time you get an update, push through for Windows, push through for Microsoft, it will automatically update your Power BI desktop. If you download it from here and install it separately, you have to manage the updates. You get to manage the updates. So the nice thing is if you're looking at features and you don't want to update yet for whatever reason, and you download it from here, you have more control around it. If you're one of those people who are like, I just want the latest and I'm fine with Microsoft doing that, you know, like it just did to my laptop, then download it through the App Store. The best practice based on all the Power BI gurus that I know is to just do it out of the App Store. That way you don't have to mess with it. All right, but I just like to tell people that because I don't think a lot of people realize they have the option. Okay, so once you log in, there's a few things I want to show you, and then I'll show you how this works live. So when you pull up Power BI Desktop, this really nice screen pops up. This changes a little bit over time, like occasionally they change a few things on here. But when you go into it, the thing that I want to point out is that the screen's going to pop up, and it's got these really cool videos on it. All right, so if you want to learn more about Power BI, most of the Office applications are starting to move to this, but they've got these really nice videos on here so you can learn more about Power BI just by opening Power BI Desktop. The videos are actually really helpful. Yay, Microsoft, they're finally figuring it out. They're finally pushing out good training. All right, so these are actually really nice. In addition, if you notice on the right side of the screen, it gives you links to all of your support channels. So there is actually a forum and a Power BI blog that are very, very well done. They're written in end user terminology. They're not super technical. They're not development heavy. So you can get in there as a report person and you can understand what the feature updates are every time they put out an update. So it's really, really nice. And then you can see on the bottom, the last thing is there's tutorials. So if you've watched these couple of videos and you want to actually go practice, there's a tutorial option and it'll take you out to more advanced tutorials. So I've been able to download a lot of tutorial data which is what I typically use to demo off of, because I can just pull it in from here, play with it in my environment, and then it looks really nice, and I can show you how it works. All right, so if you want to play around your environment, but you don't have any data that you want to use, you can go to the tutorials and you can actually download PBIX files to play with. All right. Okay, so first and foremost, you get into Power BI Desktop. I'm going to walk you through this here in a minute after I go through the presentation. But once you get it, it's going to look like this. It's going to be really familiar for those of you guys who are advanced Excel users, especially if you've done any Power Query or Power View. It's really similar. It's kind of like a pivot table, and Power Query and Power View all got together and had a child, right? Like they all kind of combined into one new application. So what ends up happening is, oh, and Access, don't forget, you got a little piece of Access thrown in here. All right, so you kind of got like Power View where you've got your kind of desktop area that you can kind of drag things in and out to make it look nice. On the right-hand side, you've got your visualization pieces, and it'll show the fields. I'll show you here the fields in a few minutes, but it kind of looks like a pivot table design. So if you go to design a pivot table or a pivot chart, you know how you can drag the stuff into the different areas. Really similar the way that it works. So you can just pick the fields that you want to see, and it'll pop it into the right place. If you really want to get customized, you can kind of drag them to where you want them. Over here on the left, I'm going to walk you through this. So over here on the left, you've got the report layer, which shows you the pretty stuff, right? That's your fabric or, you know, your layout area. What do they call it? The canvas. Call it the canvas. Put all your pretty stuff out there. The second piece here, and I'll walk through this in a minute, is the data layer, and that's kind of like Excel. All right, so it's kind of like Power Query in Excel, where you can see it kind of in rows and columns. And then this last one is a little bit accessy, and you can do this actually in Excel now. If you don't know you can do it in Excel, it's super cool. You can create relationships within your data. So you can do this in Power Query now, or you can do it in Power BI. And it really functions, I'm not going to say identically, but really, really similar. Okay. All right. So first things first, you connect to your data like I told you, right? So to do that, you click on this Get Data, and I want you guys to see how many things are in here. So there's kind of like all the basic stuff. Check this out. There's all these different options you can pull in now, and the list just keeps getting long. Every time I re-record this list gets longer and longer and longer and longer and longer. Like I said, when I first started doing this, like there was like Microsoft stuff, and that was pretty much it. And anything else had to have a custom connection. And now we're getting to the point that I can actually do some of these more advanced stuff. If you notice, when it gets to some of the other things, you can start to include applications, websites. So there's like Facebook, there's Google Analytics, there's Salesforce, there's MailChimp, there's QuickBooks. I mean, all kinds of open APIs that you don't even think about, right? That now you have access to pull into your data sources. Now, if you have a subscription to these things, you still have to log into your subscription. It's not like they're just going to give it to you for free, right? But they're not just going to give you everybody's data. They're going to give you your data. So you still have to log in to this thing and get whatever data source it is that you want to get out of it. All right? You just go to get data. So for example, I have an example up here so you can kind of see how this works. You can maybe go to a website like bankrate.com. Bankrate.com is really well known for having open source data for a lot of marketing type stuff that you can pull in and play with. I also have this in here as a URL so you guys can click on it and play with it if you want to, because it's a great source of data. So for this example, maybe we want to go somewhere there's a lot of sunshine, maybe cheap taxes, maybe good health care, right? Because we're going to retire, we want a good place. So we're going to do some data reporting on that. So we go to bankrate.com, we're going to look at best places to retire. We're going to pull that data in, and then we're going to do some visualization based on that. So what we would do is we would go to the get data. We would just simply choose a website, right? So we've got from web as an option. I do this one because it's the coolest. I just think it's neat that you can just pull stuff straight off the web, right? And then what's going to happen is it's actually going to take that data and it's going to turn it into an actual table data source for you, which is really nice. I'm, no more copying and pasting and exporting to a CSV and then pulling it in and all that nonsense. I can actually connect directly to that source It'll pull in it as a table. Notice how the first little table picture says document. Sometimes this is because there's like a README file or a how-to file or an index file. So usually you can kind of tell the difference. Power BI is pretty smart about delineating the difference between table data and non-table data. So you just have to click on it. If you weren't sure, you could just simply click on the document table and see what's in it. It's probably just like a help me file or something. So we go to the table data, and then it lays it out as this really nice preview. At this point, you have not pulled that data into anything. You're just simply previewing the data, which is super awesome, okay? Because you're not hitting anything yet. So you bring that data into preview, and let's say, for example, we're happy with it. We would just click the load button. But in this case, maybe we don't want all of it, right? Maybe we want less information. We want to calculate something. We want to change something. So right from here, where we're previewing the data, we can click that edit button, and it's going to take us, there we go, okay. We're gonna click the edit button, okay? And this is gonna take us into our modeling tool to query the data before we ever load it in. All right, so it opens this kind of temporary query mode within Power BI, so that we can transform or model the data, run a query on it. We can create new columns. We can change existing columns. We can add calculations. We can add DAX in here, like whatever it is that you want to do. You can do it in this modeling section in this kind of in-between query mode, all right? So we can edit the data. That way we're not pulling in 8 million rows of data from some data source that we don't need to own, right? Go ahead and query it, grab the stuff that makes sense to us. In this case, maybe we're changing the type of data, because while Power BI is pretty smart about most of it, you'll notice that a lot of times it's going to pull in flat text. Okay, so maybe it's pulling a CSV file in. We know that this is going to be a date field. We know that this is going to be a currency field. We know this is going to be a certain type of field. I don't want to change it after the fact, right? Let's just change it while we're querying and while we're setting it up to go in. So we can actually be in this query mode. And let's say, for example, in this one, we know what we want it to be. So we can edit it right here and right now into a whole number. And then if we change our minds, we can actually go through and delete our actions. Now, here's what's really cool about this. As long as your actions are not dependent on something ahead of it, you can actually delete out of order. I love that feature. So I can make changes all day long to this query, and as long as no action is dependent on something ahead of it, I can delete out that action, and it won't affect anything afterwards. So if I change a column's name and then I change a different column's name, but now I changed my mind and I want to go back and fix this one, I can simply delete this one and it doesn't impact the second change. It's pretty cool, all right? The only thing that doesn't work is if there's any dependent changes. So if I change a column and then I format the column and then I'm, if I'm doing things to the same thing that are dependent on the action before, then it'll delete anything that's dependent on that action up to the last one, okay? All right, so super simple. You just click the little X, it just goes away. And then it makes that change. All right, so then once you're done, you just click, after that, it'll pop it up, you click the load button, you're good to go. All right, but I love the little in-between query mode. You can pick what you want, get it all set up, and then load it in the way you want it to. Kind of like the old days, how we used to bring in CSV files, model the whole thing in Excel, and then you'd hand it off. Yeah. Okay. So step number 3, creating our reports and dashboards. So once you've got all your data in there, you've modeled it to what you want, now you're ready to build stuff out. Now you're going to create a report or a dashboard. And the only reason I put this slide in here is because these are the technical terms for reports and dashboards. A lot of people get really confused about the difference between a report and a dashboard in Power BI. So here's the thing. A report, number one, I know I should switch these. Number one, it really has to come from the same data set, okay? So a report can have multiple pages in it, but it really all stems from one data set within your Power BI file, okay? You can have multiple data sets in it, but your reports can only pull from one data set. Dashboards, on the other hand, can have tiles and visualizations that come from various sources. So you can have multiple data sets that come into one dashboard, but a report can have multiple pages, but only one data set. Okay, super confusing, I know. And when I was talking about if you publish this out to Power BI portal, people can see it if they don't have a license. This is where you can share those dashboards, but they're read-only if they don't have a license. Okay, so a dashboard is a collection of tiles that can come from multiple data sets. A report is just multiple pages, but all of the stuff is coming from one data source. Okay. So now that I've kind of walked you through the basics of it, okay, I also put some more drill down information so you can come back and reference more information. Okay, so we talked about some of these different areas. I've kind of gone in on them, so now I'm going to go through. This is kind of like a really nice slide that tells you all the things and all the different places that are on here. We talked about the first one, which is our options of which view we're in. So remember, the first one is our report view, the second one is our data view, and the third one's our relationship view, right? Number 2 is the canvas. All right, so it says the report view or the canvas where your visualizations are created and arranged. So this is your canvas area. Number 3 down here, so this is going to remind you a lot of Excel, right? So you can have multiple pages just like you can in Excel. And they call it worksheets in Excel. It's pages in the canvas. All right, so you have multiple pages down here on number 3. It's really easy, just like in Excel. You click the plus button, you right click and delete. Super easy, right? Number 4 is the visualizations pane. So number 4, if you look over there, so it's kind of like the Excel charts and graphs wizard, like threw up all over the edge of this, right? So there's all these different options for visualizations that you have, and then it's just a matter of which one you want. The really nice thing is once you've got your data in here, you can kind of hot swap these, right? So you can just click on different ones and see which ones you like. And as long as the data source matches the type of visualization, it'll just change dynamically. If the data source does not match the visualization that you're picking, it will throw a fit. And it'll say, so let's say, for example, I want to do a timeline, right? So I want to do a timeline visualization. I click on it, and there's no data, right? So there's no data that has dates in it. Then it's going to go, I can't do that. It's just going to get mad at you, and it's just going, I can't do that because there's no date values in here. It won't let you do it, okay? Other than that, you can kind of hot swap and pick whatever visualizations you want, okay? Number 5 is the fields area, and I'm going to show you what that looks like here in a second. But right here on the right, so any data sources that you have in your data modeling tool, you're going to see the tables over here, and then when you expand them, it'll show the fields. See how that kind of looks like a pivot table or a pivot chart? It's really kind of similar. So when I teach people, I teach Excel, then I teach Advanced Excel, then I teach pivot tables, then I teach Power Query, then I teach Power BI. I'm like, if you can get to Power Query, this should not be too terribly difficult, all right? So if you look over here, we've got our options. What'll end up happening is if you have any formulas or calculations, they'll be at the top because those are the ones that typically you want, right? And then after that, it'll list the fields after that. So you just check them, or you can drag them to the proper location in your visualization area, like a pivot chart. And that way they'll show up in the right place. Okay? There's a lot more advanced configuration you can do over here in your, let me make this a little bit bigger. So in the visualization area, see down under here, under the visualization, those are the types of visualization. Then underneath that, those change for every visualization. So your filters, your display options, for every different visualization, those will change based on what you're trying to accomplish, because they're going to have different filters, different axes, things like that, right? So basically, you just click on it, drag it into the right place, voila. Based on the type of data, if you just click it, Power BI will try to make an assumption. So if it's geographical data, it's going to give you a map. If it's time-based data, it's going to give you a date line, things like that, right? It's going to give you what it thinks makes the most sense based on the type of data that you've got. And so in this case, we're going to do a report on the state field. When we do that, it goes, hey, this is geographical data, so there's a map, right? Now, the big thing, remember I told you to make sure you have categories defined. If you wanted to drill down to state, city, zip code, region, if you don't have those data fields built in and categorized and subcategorized, your drill down is not going to work. You're going to click on states all day long and not know why you can't drill down into states. You're like, I thought Power BI would let me do that. It will, as long as you have those categorizations and subcategorizations defined. So as long as you got the fields and as long as the categorizations are defined, when you go to here and you click on the state, it will let you drill in. If you don't have that information, it's not going to work. All right. Here's a nice, pretty picture of what it looks like. So these are called tiles, and each of the tiles just has a different visualization exposed on the tile. You can see we've got multiple pages, right? So maybe in our report, we've got different views of the same information for different audiences. So one tip I will tell you, these don't have names on their pages. I highly recommend you name your pages with something that makes sense. So maybe, you know, grouped by state or, right, highest dollar or highest sales by region, whatever it makes sense, whatever visualizations you're trying to sell. Or maybe there's the finance team and there's the accounting team, whatever makes sense. All right. Once you have created your visualizations, you got it all ready, the next thing is to publish it. Okay, so here's a tip that I'm going to share with you. I don't know why, but it can be temperamental. If you don't get the success message, try again. Do not trust Power BI. If you publish it out there and it says it's good, but you don't get that message, you're not good. It is going to be broken for the rest of your life, and you'll never get it to work right. Okay, so just make sure that you get this success message. And as long as you get that, you're golden and everything should be fine. Okay, so you're going to sign in. This is where you have to have the Power BI license. If you have a Power BI license, you're going to sign with your Office 365 account. What's going to happen is that's going to then allow you to publish it straight up. Right? And then, so you can either save your PBIX file or you can publish it out to Power BI portal at this point. All right? So you can either then, it'll pop open Power BI portal for you, or you can pull the PBIX file in separately, either way. In this case, I'm pulling it in separately. I'm just kind of showing you guys how to do this. So you click the Get Data, and then there's, you click My Organization, you click Local File. Let's say, for example, we're pulling this in from Excel, or we're pulling this in from a PBIX file, whatever, and then it'll upload it right there. Okay, so this is just like any Office application. You're just pulling in your file. To be able to share it, there's a few little weirdo things. So once you get in there, if you want to share this file with somebody, it works like all the other Office 365 stuff. It's super convenient and super intuitive. You click on that little circle. I would have known that, right? So basically, once you have it, you click on under your face, there's this little circle thing. And when you click on that, it allows you to share your dashboard just like any other Office 365 file. You can just pick anybody in your organization. Once again, back to the Power BI licensing thing. Then you can just share it out. And you can either share the PBIX file or you can publish it through the service. All right. So now we're tight on time. Let me see if I can log into my Power BI portal real quick. Okay. Yeah, right. Let's see. I'm gonna go. I want to show you what this looks like, just so you can see what the. I've got a lot of pictures in there, but. It's very nice. Got Power BI open. Okay, so this is what Power BI desktop looks like. See, it's exactly like the pictures. I will tell you this: Power BI has been really nice because of all of the products. It really hasn't changed a ton, which has been really nice for me because it stayed pretty consistent to everything. But you can see that it's even. This is the newest version of Power BI desktop. It's really, really similar to what I showed you, but there's a few little changes here and there. So basically, you just do all of that. Here's your publish button right here. You just click the publish, and then it'll kick it up. All right, so once you get to Power BI portal, this is a little bit different than Power BI desktop. So Power BI desktop and Power BI portal are not the same thing. Everybody's like, well, isn't it the same thing? No. Power BI portal is a place to save your Power BI projects and to share your Power BI projects. Okay, but it is not the same thing as Power BI desktop. All right, so once I go into Power BI portal, you can see that now I can go in here. You can have workspaces for each of your group Office 365 groups. You can save stuff in there. For example, I put a couple things in here just to play with so you can see what it looks like. So here's my workspace. Just got some different options. These are the dashboards that I have available to me. These are the reports that I have made. Here's any of the workbooks that back up any of these, which I don't have any in here right now. And if I have any existing data sets, they're going to be in here too. Once I get into the data sets, you can see down here, I've got different options of things that I can do with those data sets from Power BI portal. So I can refresh the data. I can create a report from this data. So I've got my data sitting here and create a new report. And then there's a couple of other options I can do. If I want to, this is one of my favorites, if I want to analyze this data set in Excel outside of this, I can click this Analyze in Excel, and it's just like SharePoint. It'll export the whole data set into an Excel file, and then I can play with it there if I want to. So I do that a lot if I just want to kick it out of here and play with it in Excel. So I'm going to go back to the dashboards. I've been playing with this one. This Office 365 Adoption Preview is a free app. If you guys want to play with an app in Power BI, this is a good one to play with. So it's an app. If you go up to apps right here, there's just this Get Apps. And there's a lot of free options. You just go to apps. You can look at them and it tells you if they're free or not, but you can just click on this Get It Now. But there's all these kind of cool apps that you can play with in here that build out all the dashboards for you so you don't have to do the work. And so this was just one of them. So basically I enabled this in my tenant. I pulled it into Power BI portal. So now I can share this to Teams as a tab, as the dashboard. So I'm going to click on this and you can see what this looks like. Look how this is all pre-built already. It pulls the information from my tenant directly. I didn't even have to create any of this. Like I didn't have to build any of it. I literally just loaded the app and it pulls all the right connections out of the box. Now, if I wanted to open this PBIX file in Power BI Desktop and change the tiles, change the visualizations, modify any of the calculations, I could. But if I like it the way it is, it's like 1,000 times less work for me to have to mess with it. So the apps are really, really nice. I pulled this in, I did this, and then like I said, all you have to do is go into Teams, click on the little plus, pick Power BI as a plus, and it's going to tell you the dashboards that you have available in Power BI portal. And you can just pop those into Teams. All right. Okay, I think we're out of time, but I showed you a lot of it. So questions? Or are your brains full? Yes. Yeah, so you have two options. You can manually refresh your data by clicking on the refresh button, or you can set a refresh event timer to run through the service. Yep, either way. Thanks, guys. Honestly, I'd say probably 75 to 80% of people are happy with a daily refresh. So if you can do it overnight and then deliver the last day's results, I would say most things, about 75% of them are happy with that. It's a very small percentage of people that want anything that's truly live. A lot of people are even happy with stuff in the last 1 to 4 hours. But I would say, because I think the primary reports are either financial or HR, and most of those are updated in like SAP or Power or the other one, PeopleSoft, like every day, right? So most of those updates are done every day. And so that's really all the data refresh you're getting anyways, right? Because it runs a job at night to update the data. So even if they got newer data, it wouldn't make any difference. So think about the system you're pulling the data from. If SAP is only updating once a night, it's not going to do you any good to do it any more often than that. Now, if you've got live data, so this is Office 365 data, I still probably don't want to pull live data, but maybe I want to pull it in the last couple of hours. Even then, my users are still going to have better performance if I pull it for the last couple of hours because it's going to keep updated, right? You can also manually refresh it. So that way, let's say I've got a connection, I run a refresh every once in a while, but I'm willing to wait on a manual refresh. I can click the button and have the choice to have it refreshed right then. I mean, I would go and look at Microsoft best practices around there because it depends on the data that you're bringing in. It typically tends to be around size, not around number, right? So basically data size turns into a certain amount of rows. So if it's SQL data, it's going to be one thing. If it's some other type of data, it's going to be a different answer. So I would just go look at best practices for all of it. There's really no easy answer for that. And honestly, I find that you can go get a lot of data in here before it blows up. right? And the blowing up is really just that it's really, really slow. I don't know that I've ever seen it break. I think it just gets incredibly slow.
We were just talking about that, about the reports that we pull for our OneDrive usage, and you've got over 35,000 users and over 250,000 items. And it takes about 3 days for it to return, but it doesn't break.
Yeah. Very good example. Yeah. It takes a really long time, but yeah, but I don't know that I've ever seen it, as long as nothing messes with the data source while you're trying to do it. I don't think I've ever seen it break. Just got to be really patient. Any other questions? All right. Well, thanks for coming. If you need anything, feel free to email me and ask me questions.
Yep.
Thanks everybody for coming. On the way out, feel free to take all that stuff with you. I don't want to take it. See you next month. We're going to have Stacy Deer-Stroll join us remotely at the Lord Library.
Here's my info if you guys need it.